Children in Need got it covered. Wednesday, 30th of October on BBC One.
You free Friday night? I'm having a few friends over if you're around.
That's awesome!
Yeah, wonderful. No.
Look out! I forgot how much I like being out here.
Someone's going to have a good weekend.
The Graham Norton Show, Friday at 10:35 on BBC One.
Seen some drama in my time, but nothing compares to this. Come on, Wall. You've been taking liberties all night.
I hope that Vicky hasn't doubled up on this one.
I'm sick of it. Get the right hump of it. We need to boost these Reddies right up, Wall. Was she right or was she wrong?
The Wall continues Saturday at 8:20 on BBC One.
A roundup of the week's politics in the South West now on BBC One. Here's Martin Oates.
Parliament puts Brexit on pause, led by a Dorset MP. Busloads from the region descend on Parliament to put pressure on the MPs inside.
As you can tell, I'm a bit emotional because I feel so deeply about it, that we are really on that cliff edge.
Dorset MP Oliver Letwin is blamed for our delayed departure.
Now, I respect the intention of my right honourable friend, the member for West Dorset, but his amendment would render today's vote meaningless.
And where does it leave our fishing communities? Will we ever really take back control of our waters?
I was working in Iceland when they shut Iceland down, and it scraps a lot of boats. So they don't want to this deal up. They want to get our waters back.
And joining me to discuss all that and more in the next half hour is Steve Double, Conservative MP for St Austell and Newquay, Alexander Waugh, Brexit Party prospective parliamentary candidate for Bridgwater and West Somerset, Caroline Voden, Liberal Democrat MEP for the South West, and from New Broadcasting House in London by Ben Bradshaw, Labour MP for Exeter. Yesterday, Dorset MP Sir Oliver Letwin again took the leading role in parliamentary manoeuvres to foil the Prime Minister's Brexit plans. Here's a quick taste of the Commons debate, which led up to yet another request for a Brexit extension.
Will my right honourable friend reassure the fishermen in my constituency that he will put right the wrong heaped on them over 40 years ago, and they will get a better share of the fish from UK waters?
Evidence matters, Prime Minister. How can you possibly assure our constituents that this is a good deal if the Prime Minister hasn't carried out an economic impact assessment of what it will cost them? And if he has carried that out, why on earth are we not able to see it as we debate this today?
Well said. Minister! And it would be a great shame if the opportunity to have a meaningful vote, which is what I believe this House has been convoked to do, were to be taken away from us. And I just say that with the greatest respect to my right honourable friend, who I think is actuated by the best possible intentions.
Ben, your colleague, the Labour MP Caroline Flint, yesterday said that at the end of the day, all of this apparent concern about ruling out no deal is a cover for a lot of MPs who basically want to stop Brexit. Now, I know in your case, you didn't vote for Article 50. You're clear you want another referendum and a campaign to remain. But isn't it the case that these tactics are a bit underhand?
No, Caroline, bless her, is in a minority of one there. She's a sort of newborn Lexiteer all of a sudden, which I think is a real pity. I know her and we go back many years. No, what yesterday was about, it wasn't about the deal. That was a bit of media myth. Next week it's going to be about the deal, if as we expect, the government brings it back to the House of Commons. What yesterday was about, and Oliver Letwin was absolutely right about this, was ensuring that when we get to debate the bill, if for any reason the bill doesn't go through, that we don't crash out at the end of October without a deal. That's all that yesterday was about, and I'm delighted that we've once again ensured that this Prime Minister, whom we don't trust, for very good reason in my view, cannot crash us out of the European Union at the end of October without a deal. But
there was a debate, wasn't there, behind the scenes as to whether to have an amendment for a second referendum, and the decision was taken that the votes weren't there. It's tactics, it's playing for time, isn't it?
There are always discussions and debates about what to do when, but the very strong consensus, given the worry that we had that the ERG, that's the hard Brexiteer right of the Tory party, would vote yesterday for the deal as they did, but then when it comes to implementing it over the weeks ahead, that they would then not vote for it, because what they want to crash out no-deal Brexit. So we had to make sure that it wasn't possible for that to happen. That's all yesterday was about. Like-minded MPs, moderate Conservatives coming together with all of the opposition parties to help save the United Kingdom from such a disaster.
OK, Steve, I want to stick to this theme of arguably sort of artificial positions. Isn't it the case that the only person for whom this deadline of the 31st of October, which was actually, in fact, imposed by President Macron, is important, is the Prime Minister, because he's made one of these rash political pledges that we will leave on the 31st of October. If you're a Brexiteer who wants to leave, it doesn't matter whether it's the 31st of November, the 31st of January, it just needs to happen. But it's incredibly important because Boris Johnson's made this pledge.
What's incredibly important is we don't just keep kicking the can down the road, prolong the uncertainty and the chaos that we're in. We need to get this done. Let's be clear what happened. Those that forced through the Ben Bill, what we call the Surrender Act, didn't think Boris Johnson would get a deal, and that's why they put it in. He confounded them. He got a deal. Then they didn't think he had a chance of getting it through Parliament. He was about to get it through Parliament, so they had to come up with some other clever means of kicking the can down the road to avoid voting on this deal, to show that Parliament supports this deal. This is all about delaying Brexit in order to keep arguing about it and hopefully wear everyone down so that it gets cancelled. And the Prime Minister is clear, we're not going to allow that to happen.
Caroline, it's absolutely true, isn't it? The calculation on the Remain side was that Boris wouldn't get a deal. I might suggest to you, as a Lib Dem, that as Lib Dems, you've made a few miscalculations. I mean, your revoke position was probably anticipating the Labour Party conference would force Jeremy Corbyn to commit to campaign for Remain. You could then trumpet and say, yeah, but we would revoke. You've miscalled some of this, haven't you?
Well,
got caught out.
I think there's a lot of people who didn't expect Boris Johnson to get a deal because 3 or 4 weeks ago he clearly was not negotiating with the European Union, and he has come up with a deal. But I think we need to be really honest. This deal is. There's no way that this deal is anything like as good as the deal we've already got. And people like Steve keep saying we need to get Brexit done, we need to get Brexit done, and they're really playing on that. Frustration that people have and the fact that people are so tired of Brexit. And I absolutely get that. I agree with that. But people need to be under no doubt that if we leave with this deal, that is the beginning of 20 or 30 years of negotiations to come up with a free trade agreement when we've already got one with our 27 closest neighbours and friends. We don't need to negotiate a trade deal with the EU for the next 20 years. We've got one. We need to start talking about the things that really matter.
OK, Alexander, what about put something similar to you? Some people are saying, if you look at the Brexit Party position, Nigel Farage's position, is a bit like, you know, the Lib Dems, arguably finding any excuse not to do a deal with Corbyn. You will always set the bar too high for Boris Johnson because it's your party political advantage to do so.
Not interested at all in party political advantage. We want to put the country first, and that's well known. Farage has said it 1,000 times. We're sick of the buffoonery that's going on, like everybody in the country, in the House of Commons. I have very mixed feelings about this extension. The absolute point...
Well, Nigel Farage is quite enthusiastic about it, isn't he?
Maybe. The absolute point...
Well, he is, isn't he?
Well, I have mixed feelings, and the reason I have mixed feelings about it is because I do not exactly believe that Oliver Letwin was speaking honourably when he gave his reasons. I think he wants to stop Brexit. There's no doubt about it. Now, of course, I want to avoid this deal. This deal is really terrible, and for one simple reason. People say we didn't have a mandate for no deal. Well, what was the main slogan of the Leave movement in 2016? It was take back control. And there is actually only one deal that takes back control properly, and that's a WTO clean break Brexit. And what are we getting from this appalling sellout? And I don't want to... a man to exaggerate, but I would just ask one question. Who here would sign a deal on their own behalves and the deal says, give us money? Doesn't say how much and doesn't have a cap on it. Give us money. Who would sign a deal saying do that? And if you won't do it for yourselves, you should not do it for your nation.
OK, just hold it there for a minute. The first Saturday sitting of Parliament for nearly 40 years also coincided with a huge protest, including many busloads of people from the South West on the streets of Westminster demanding another EU referendum. Here's Tamsin Melville with a view from outside Parliament looking in.
It's 5 a.m. just off the A30 in mid-Cornwall.
As you can tell, I'm a bit emotional because I feel so deeply about it, that we are really on that cliff edge.
Campaigners for a second referendum are boarding 4 coaches bound for London.
We're always hopeful, otherwise we wouldn't be carrying on banging our drums.
A former Lib Dem MP is one of those in the queue.
I wouldn't be able to sleep easy knowing that I just rolled over and let this happen.
That might be our last chance to do something about it.
Keeping up the fight, but so are those on the other side of the Brexit divide. Rapturous applause in a Cornish leisure centre this week for Nigel Farage, whose Brexit party topped the polls in Cornwall in the EU elections.
Which is surprising, really, because everywhere I go in Cornwall, I see this ghastly European flag.
But maybe not the last hurrah for the Cornish, joining tens of thousands of others demanding a final say, as the amendment from West Dorset's Oliver Letwin meant no meaningful vote for now.
Everyone's using delaying tactics for their own ends and no other reasons. Personally, I don't care now. One way or the other, just make a decision and get on with it. I think we're all fed up.
At the Union Inn in Saltash, it's not going down well with voters on both sides.
I don't think they need any more time. You know, people talk about kicking the can down the road. There won't be any can left by the time they kicked it much further.
Are you happy with this new deal from Boris Johnson?
I haven't read the details, like Mr Corbyn.
I think we should be out now. I don't mind no deal. I just want out.
I feel sorry for all the small businesses and the larger businesses that are going to suffer. I feel desperately concerned for our fishermen, who I think are going to be hung out to dry at some point in the future. They will be used as a bargaining chip.
We've got to get it done. I don't want to be reading about this in the newspaper next week. Done.
So even if the deal might not be as good as you'd like it to be, you just want out now, do you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I tell you, it's always going to be about compromise, isn't it? No one's going to get what they want.
20,000 Cornish folk.
The delay keeps the People's Vote campaigners' hopes alive for now, but it's getting a mixed reaction from the region's MPs, as the government says it will seek a vote on the deal this week.
Tamsin Melville reporting there. Steve, is this a great new deal, as the Prime Minister says, or is this a hold your nose and vote for it affair, which is obviously the attitude you took to Theresa May's proposal?
Well, in my view, it's far better than Theresa May's deal, and in that regard, it's a good deal because it addresses the main concerns that I had with the former Prime Minister's deal. I think we have to be realistic. In the current situation in Parliament, none of us are going to get everything we would like, but for me, this deal deals with the main issues that I want to see. And we have to be pragmatic about it and get this done. And this deal enables us to do that whilst taking back control of all of the key things.
Does that pragmatism basically mean stitching up the DUP? I mean, going back to the spring, MPs like you were going around saying, you know, we need to make sure the DUP are happy with this. I'm saying they take your cues. I mean, Sammy Wilson, the UP MP, I think somebody you know quite well, shortly after the vote was saying, lamenting the irony that you have a group of MPs here amongst the staunchest Brexiteers in the Commons, and they're the ones being partially left in the EU.
Well, I regret the position the DU have taken. I think they have...
You don't regret the way the Prime Minister...
Well, I think if you look at what this deal does for Northern Ireland, it puts it in an incredibly good position that actually, when it actually happens, they may well think, this is so good, we may want to stay like this, because they will be able to have all the benefits of the single market while not being in the customs union. That's something the EU said they would never allow to happen, and Boris Johnson has managed to achieve that.
Ben?
Well, I mean, it's clear it is a problem for the DUP, who were promised 6 months ago by Boris Johnson at their annual conference that no British Prime Minister could ever contemplate a border in the Irish Sea. They feel utterly betrayed. And it's interesting now that they're even talking about potentially supporting a confirmatory referendum. What matters to them much more than anything else is the union. But what is much more important about this deal for us in England is it's far, far worse for England, Wales and Scotland than Theresa May's deal was, because it is the hardest of Brexits, away from any relationship with the single market and the customs union. It will devastate our industry. The farming industry, the NFU called it a total betrayal last week. Your interviewee there, the lady who said the fishing industry is about to be sold down the river, is absolutely right. They're about to be betrayed, just as the DUP have been betrayed and just as the farmers have been betrayed by Boris Johnson. You cannot believe a single word this man says.
Caroline, I think it's been apparent for a long time that, you know, people on both sides are playing for very high stakes. I mean, looking back now, the way things are going, not any sense that maybe you've been better off with Theresa May's deal as a Remainer?
I think I've said before that if this had been handled differently way back in 2016, then we would not be in this place now. The reason positions have become so polarised is because the Conservatives have handled this so badly from day one, you know, with the red lines and we won't do this and we won't do that and this is our position right from day one. You know, I've always said that there should have been some kind of collective voice of, you know, people who are active in society, in charities, in churches, in business, in education, in finance, who should have all come together to find a way through, because we were clearly so divided. It's the Conservatives that have put us in this position. And I don't believe that it's right that such a massive constitutional change should happen without an agreement by, I don't know, 60-65% of the population. It has to go back to the people. This cannot be done on a majority in the House of Commons of 1 or 2 or maybe 3 MPs next week. That's an absolute travesty. And I totally agree with Ben that this deal is the worst of all worlds. You know, we're talking about environmental rights, workers' rights, you know, diverging from all the European Union legislation that has given us protection in this country.
Alexander, just to be clear, you're singing the praises of a WTO Brexit. I mean, talking to some Tory Brexiteers who would advocate no deal, but would advocate no deal as a stepping stone to then coming back and then negotiating some kind of trade deal. Are you suggesting that leaving on WTO terms is optimal? That's it? That's the way we carry on? Do you want trade deals with anybody?
Obviously we want trade deals, there's no question about it. But what's being suggested now is a Tory whitewash. It's not a trade deal in any sense. We don't even know when we're going to get that trade deal. It's not even meant to be a trade deal, as he quite rightly says. What does it do? And I'm not going to be interrupted. What does it do, this deal? It puts the EU above our own parliament. It puts the EU above our right to deploy our own military. It destroys our fishing industry. It controls aspects of our foreign policy, and all that before we're allowed to come to a trade deal. What it does, I mean, just imagine if I was going to go to Caroline and say, Caroline, I'd love to make a deal with you, but I'll tell you what, let's sign a treaty first whereby you have more power over me while we make the negotiations. How clever is that? Does anyone think that's a sensible idea? And the whole Tory slogan, which is get Brexit done. How many times have we heard Boris say that? Does that sound enthusiastic to you? No, it sounds like someone who's got a tummy ache and wants to go to the lavatory.
It's desperation. It's absolute desperation.
Casey.
Well, this deal provides a transition period where we can negotiate a free trade deal. And I know everyone says you'll never get it done in time, but usually when a free trade deal is negotiated, there is no hard deadline. There will be a hard deadline to negotiate this deal. And we've seen what the Prime Minister can do just in the last few weeks. When you present the EU with a very clear hard deadline, you can get them to move and agree quickly. And I believe if we can get this deal through, that is what will happen. They will come to the table and we will be able to get a free trade deal negotiated with them in order for us to leave at the end of next year and move on to that.
And if you want a free trade agreement with the EU 27, you're going to have to sign up to all their standards, so because level playing field is absolutely crucial.
Well, that will be part of the negotiation.
Why are we doing this? Because we won't end up in any different situation than we are at the moment.
That
we
will
will
be
have
part
wasted
of the
billions
negotiations. That will be part of the negotiations.
Well, you've got to answer that question. Why are we doing it? And if the answer is to get Brexit done, then we're doing something very bad indeed. And both Caroline and opposite sides of this debate, but we completely agree with that. This is a battle that's going on, and it needs to be won properly, not by a lot of lazy boneses who desperately want to get back into Parliament.
I'm sorry, Alexander, that throwing insults around isn't going to achieve anything. And it's very interesting that you've got the Brexit Party and the Liberal Democrats here agreeing on something which, you know, in itself was quite astounding. The Prime Minister is committed to honour the referendum and get us out of the EU at the end of October. That is what we're all behind him to achieve.
But this is not just about winning a game, is it? This is not some
it's about
Eton
delivering
playground thing.
It's delivering on the biggest democratic vote we've ever seen.
OK, I do want some time to talk about fishing, because possibly no industry has been more closely associated with the campaign to leave the EU than fishing. But there's disquiet within the industry as to how rosy a future the government is really willing or able to deliver if and when we do actually leave. Lucy Fisher reports.
It's been the poster child of Brexit, one of the simplest messages to understand, taking back control of our waters.
We will become an independent coastal state.
Now we can say that we'll decide who catches that fish.
We'd have control of our fishing grounds again.
I hope the opportunity to take back control of our fisheries.
From Newlyn to Plymouth, from Brixham to Weymouth, many in the fishing communities campaigned to leave, hopeful of the extra opportunities that having control over our fishing rights might provide. But even if this deal is eventually passed, will we in fact be taking back control of our waters? The answer from government, not yet.
Well, it's just not Brexit. I mean, we've taken 3.5 years to get to this point, and if this was to be agreed, we then enter into years more negotiations for the prize of a free trade agreement, which we already know we will not get unless we surrender our territorial fishing waters.
The campaign group Fishing for Leave calls the deal dire. It says nothing has changed and that more EU rules could be imposed during the transition period. Fishermen in Newlyn yesterday saying it reminds them of previous international fishing disputes.
I was working in Iceland when they shut Iceland down, and it scrapped a lot of boats, So they don't want to push the deal up. They want to get our waters back.
You know, it's been proved with the Scallop Wars, you know, that sort of stuff. We got booted out the French waters when we were entitled to go in there in the first place. So.
Is it disappointing that we won't leave necessarily on November the 1st, that we won't get back control of our waters?
Tell you the truth, I don't really care. I just want to get it done.
If we exit the EU on the 31st of October in a couple of weeks' time, and we haven't...
I think we will, so go for an extension again.
But if we do, and then we haven't taken back control of our waters, what would you make of that?
Well, I think we will be queuing.
One of the big gains from Brexit for fishermen is the reintroduction of a 12-mile exclusion zone around the UK, a zone that only UK boats would fish with no access for foreign fleets. But DEFRA is unable to confirm when that will happen, possibly at the end of the transition period in a year. And what about the rest of our waters, up to 200 miles out?
Broadly speaking, what we'd be saying is we want a fairer share of the stocks in our waters in return for a particular amount of access that we continue to grant you. So I think it's unlikely we get to a situation where we say all EU vessels are excluded, but what we will be saying is there are certain conditions of the access that we grant, and that will be a rebalancing of quota shares.
When it comes down to it, ministers will trade our fishing access to our fishing waters for other parts of an economic settlement in a trade deal. And I simply think that fishing is going to be betrayed and betrayed and betrayed time and time again. But when it comes to the promotion, the people really in favour of leaving the European Union will be having their pictures taken on a fishing boat, but they won't be doing the hard graft of getting the detail right.
Michel Barnier, the EU's Brexit chief negotiator, seen here on the right, has been very clear. Access to our waters for European fishing boats is a clear red line for them. In fact, they'd impose tariffs on our fish exports until such an agreement is reached. On top of this, news this week that the company awarded the contract for monitoring UK fishing vessels and the movements of foreign vessels in our waters has been awarded to a French company, CLS, which is part state-owned, possibly not the taking back control that many had envisaged.
Ben, you're a former fisheries minister. It strikes me that the present fisheries minister has been consistently cautious in what he's promised to fishermen. Is that with good reason, in your view?
Yes, but it's not the impression that the fishing industry has been given all the way along. is it? And I mean, you couldn't make it up. We haven't even got a patrol boat. We're having to use a French company to do this. But the most important thing here, which people keep forgetting, and I hate to say, Martin, I told you so, as I've said this many times on your programme, our fishing industry requires 80% on exports. We export 80% of what we catch straight to the rest of the European Union. We import 80% of what we consume, mainly from outside the European Union. So anything that puts barriers in place, tariffs or customs barriers or delays at ports, is going to be absolutely crippling to our fishing industry. That is far more important than haggling over little bits of quota here and there. We would like more quota to go to small boats, by the way, but the crucial issue here is free and frictionless trade. That's what matters most to our fishing industry, and that's what this government is giving up in Boris Johnson's deal.
Steve, I mean, you've got a fishing port, Mabagizzi, in your constituency. Do you have any misgivings as to where this might end?
I think the fishermen of Newquay would want me to acknowledge.
OK, we don't want to disrespect the fishermen of Newquay. No, absolutely not.
Well, this deal, yes, delays the point in which we actually get control of our waters to the end of next year during that implementation period. But at that point, we do, and we are then free to negotiate access to our waters and ensure that our fishermen get a much fairer share of the quota. And a lot of fishing organisations have welcomed that because it provides a smooth
But of course
transition.
they'd like more quota. In fact, George Eustace, the minister, in a recent Commons committee hearing, was pointing out that, you know, he conceded they will face at least some barriers to, you know, the sort of free trade they have at the moment, but they're hoping the extra quota will compensate for that. What about this point? The Macron's been absolutely clear. And he's not going to see a huge chunk of the French fishing industry put out of business overnight. This will be an absolute red line. And the government keeps saying, well, you know, we'll give you a fairer share. As your colleague Neil Parish in the Environment Select Committee, I think now going back a year or two, said to the Minister, the question is, how many fish? How many extra fish?
And that will have to be negotiated, wouldn't it? There is a balance.
Look like many, though,
but there is a balance here between quota and access to the market. And Ben, you know, I don't often agree with Ben, but Ben makes a good point about fishermen don't just need to be able to catch more fish, they then need access to the market to be able to sell that fish. And there is a balance to be struck between better access to the quota and a fairer share of the quota for our fishermen. And there are many of us who are absolutely determined to achieve that, whilst at the same time making sure that they can sell them.
Yeah.
Well, the Conservatives don't like people like me calling them lazy boneses, but I would very much like to see some evidence that the Conservative Party that is all lined up behind signing this wretched deal have actually read it. Because in that deal, it specifies that we must coordinate on fishing policy in a non-discriminatory way, and we all know what that means, and that there are huge risks now that are running up. We're going to have to sign a fishing deal before we even get our trade deal, and we have to be non-discriminatory. In other words, we cannot say, oh, we'll have our fishing waters back. And they've even put a clause in there, which you want to sign up to, which says we cannot buy back our fishing quotas, because that would be discriminatory. So I'm sorry, there's no way of looking at this. We are selling out.
Alexander, you're rehearsing all the difficulties with this. Hasn't Nigel Farage, though, rather knocked on the head your assertion you're going to get a free trade deal? Because he's saying you're not going to get a free trade deal because Macron will prevent you from fishing.
I think Nigel Farage is entirely right.
So we just stick with WTO forever?
Well,
that's the reality.
Get WTO and then negotiate a trade deal from a position of independence.
He's saying that would be blocked by your unwillingness, presumably, to give away fishing rights.
No, what Nigel Farage is quite correctly saying is that if we sign this appalling deal, we get the screws put on us over months, possibly years.
It's not going to change Macron's...
Macron's not going to change his position, whether or not we have...
We're running outside Caroline quickly. You're saying remain, which isn't a great deal for fishermen either, is it?
I think we have to work with the French and the Spanish. We have to do what my colleague Chris Davis, Liberal Democrat MEP, who's the chair of the Fisheries Committee in the European Union, is doing, is sitting down 3, 4, 5 times a week for hours at a time, talking to our European counterparts to come up with policies that benefit all of us. And that's the only way to do it.
OK, we're out of time. Thank you to all of you. Another very interesting week ahead. See you at the same time next week. Goodbye.
Match of the Day X is a brand new show that brings you football, fashion, music and culture from around the Premier League. This week, Amelia de Moldenberg joins us in the penthouse. Craig and Reece are put through their paces by Crystal Palace. And we hear from Chelsea manager Frank Lampard. Watch it now on BBC iPlayer.
Could we talk about the fact that we killed a man? Why would we want to do that?
A cover-up that will trigger consequences two brothers won't see coming. A brand new 4-part drama.
I feel like I'm going to cry.
Guilt starts Wednesday the 30th of October on BBC Two and BBC iPlayer.
Seven extraordinary continents. Each one full of life. 7 Worlds, 1 Planet starts next Sunday at 6:15 on BBC One and BBC iPlayer.
At 1:15, we head to the beautifully restored Gorton Monastery for Songs of Praise. Right now on BBC One, it's Sunday morning, live.
Welcome to Sunday Morning Live. I'm Sean Fletcher.
And I'm Rhea Hebden. Coming up on today's show, an FA Cup football game was abandoned yesterday after accusations of racism. We'll ask, how should the issue be addressed?
Also, we'll be meeting the former Buddhist monk who now runs a $100 million tech meditation business.
And actor David Suchet tells me why the detective Hercule Poirot will always be a part of him.
I could put his glasses on now and know what he would dress, what he would go, what he would eat, what he would do, what he would do the whole day. I could live his life through his lens.
I am the detective unique, unsurpassed, the greatest that ever lived.
All that and lots more still to come.
We'll meet the world's first robot artist ahead of its workshop at the Tate.